Good morning, everyone. Or if you're on the East Coast, good afternoon, but happy Friday. Okay, so today we're talking about managing your firm's work in Aero. So we're going to kind of focus today on this manage menu because that's kind of the heart of setting up your firm's work in Aero, and so that you can deliver your client accounting services. Because making sure that you and your staff perform your work consistently and efficiently is really the path to providing profitable client accounting services. If you're all over the place, it's very hard to deliver these things profitably and also to deliver the level of quality in client accounting services that we all hope we're going to do. So we're going to review today how to use Aero to make that possible. So let's look really quickly at some of the options that are available on that Manage menu, and then we're going to dive into each of those a little more thoroughly. First, we're going to go up backwards here. First is the procedures. This is the detailed instructions for you and your staff of how to do tasks. Think of this as your internal knowledge base. This is where you document your firm's best practices. This is how we do things here. Email templates are where you can store sort of some of those common emails that you find yourself and your company sending out over and over again. Maybe requests to vendors for a W-9, a notification to a client that their payroll has been processed, or my favorite, an email to a new lead or a new prospect with more information about your firm and how your services work. Aero Templates, that's where Aero Workflow gets really powerful. Aero Templates lets you standardize the way your firm's work is performed. Aero Templates also let you quickly assign a task to a staff member or set up new work for a client. And then finally, in the work setup area, we have Master Aeros. And Master Aeros are what lets you schedule recurring work for a specific staff member and a specific client. So let's go back in and let's look at procedures for a minute. So this lets you take that old-fashioned accounting manual that we all used to have in binders and actually transform it to something that's alive, on the cloud, accessible to all your staff, even if they're distributed. It lets you document the step-by-step instructions, but also include some screenshots to really make it clear what you need to do, give them some more examples and some reasons why, some of the best practices, and also maybe some troubleshooting steps if things go wrong. So when you're writing these procedures, we've discovered that the best practice for creating these is actually to create them in Google Docs first, because Google Docs lets you copy and paste pictures in so easily, resize them easily, change your formatting. It's just a really fast way to actually write these, and then once they're written, you can just select all of the text, all of the pictures, copy, and then when you're in Aero and you're creating a new procedure, you just paste it all in to this area, and voila. So it's a really easy way to do this. When you have procedures, you are required to set up a procedure type. We kind of discussed this briefly last week's webinar about setting up your firm. These service types are left up to you. Here's some suggested ones. You may have a service that you provide. These may be firm-specific for internal procedures or client-specific for procedures that are specific to one particular client. Maybe they have a specific way of doing their invoicing, if you're doing their invoicing for them, or they have a particular payroll that's pretty tricky to run, and you have specific instructions just for that client that are adapted maybe from the firm's standard service model. You're going to want to name the procedure. And again, this is something that's going to make sense to you later when you're looking at the list of all your procedures so you can find it quickly. And then in this description is really the meat of everything. There are options here for formatting your text, inserting bullet points. You can insert hyperlinks that send them out to another website if they need to. You can actually insert pictures here if you need to. Again, we found it so much easier to do them in Google Drive and then do this, but absolutely you can upload a picture from somewhere. You do have to have an actual web address. So again, you can store those on your local server if you need to, on your server if you need to, up in the cloud, or you can do them and create a Google Doc address. You can create a table within here, etc. So it is pretty powerful. And then finally, if you have created a procedure for a service that you never provide anymore, you really don't want to see it on a list, you can always uncheck this active button and it'll disappear from your list. So then we can close, or we can save and close. Maybe you just wanted to pop in and adjust things. But I love that this fact is now a living document. The stuff that we do in today's world with all these SaaS apps just changes all the time. I constantly have to update my procedures. I constantly have to update that internal knowledge base so it stays relevant. And having this alive is so much easier to just go in and maybe change one step. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close that. And then I've got my procedure list. From here I can view any of them. I can sort them by type name, and then I can see whether they're active or not. So that pretty much covers procedures. We will kind of loop back to procedures at the end of today when we talk again about the library. So then let's go look at managing email templates. So you can see when you do an email template, here's one for a consulting inquiry, and then this customer name, your staff would just fill in. That's all they need to do when they're actually sending an email out from Aero. They fill in the customer name, and boom, they can send this out. It's very easy. That logs that customer has been contacted in Aero, or that lead has been contacted, and it gives everything that they need to know. So again, they don't have to keep writing it over and over again. Here's some other examples of email templates, payroll processing, right? Here is something you might send out to a client's staff member about how to use Expensify, right? Here's a welcome vendor email that you can send to your client's vendor with a link to the W-9. And so it's really easy for your staff members. They notice that, hey, the client's added a new vendor. Let's send this out and make sure they get a new W-9 for them. And again, the little drop-down caret at the right will let you add an additional email template that your staff can then access when they're in the work menu and they're actually performing a task. Then let's get down to Aero Templates. And Aero Templates are just so powerful that we're going to probably take too much time here, but I will try to hit the high points and stay inside my time allotment. Aero Templates lets you standardize how the work's done. It gives you a set of steps for doing the work, and it gives you resources for doing the work. But an Aero template is not linked to a specific client or a specific staff member. So from this dashboard, you can then assign an Aero. You can start an Aero to assign it yourself. If you want to just grab this and quickly start doing a bank rec for somebody, you've got it right here, and it will start timing you immediately. If you want to add an Aero, a task for a specific staff member, then you can go in and add a new Aero and assign it to another staff member, and then assign it to a specific client. and then go ahead and put in the options like, is it billable? Is it related to a specific client accounting services, etc. All right. The other option from this Aero template dashboard is to add a master arrow, and we're going to cover master arrows in a minute. But first, let's go back in and kind of dive into the actual Aero template itself. So if we look at this Aero template, you can see we've assigned it a category here. This is a required field, and every Aero template falls into one of these 4 categories. Normally, it would be a task. You may have an Aero template that is just for meetings, that you sort of have preset so you can grab that quickly. But then there's also the category other. If for some reason that you feel that this Aero that you've set up doesn't fall into one of our predefined categories. You can add an estimated duration for it. You're going to want to add that this is a required field, and just gives you an idea of what you think this is going to this task, how much time you think this task is going to take. This will allow you to do some KPI calculations down the road once you've been doing these tasks for a while. If this is a task that you want someone to do within a defined period of time, maybe it's close a client's books for the month, and you want them to start on the 1st, and you want to make sure it's done by the 10th. You could set the days to due date to 10 here, and then depending on when it is assigned, it will automatically go out and put the due date in there. The Aero template type, this would be the service type, and this is going to be pretty much preset per template. And again, these Aero types were what you set up to define how your services were delivered. And we covered that a bit in last week's webinar. The assigned to, normally in an Aero template, you would leave this blank. If you're a sole proprietor, go ahead and assign it to yourself, because all your work's always going to be assigned to yourself. I sometimes set up, even in my firm, templates that are specific to me, and maybe those are ones where I have one set up for a specific client that I'm doing a lot of work with currently, and I'll assign that to myself, and I'll assign it as an appointment, and I'll create an Aero template for that with all the fields pre-filled, and then when they give me a call, I can just quickly grab that and start billing really quickly. And again, in that scenario, I would assign the company, but normally in an Aero template, you leave the assigned to and the company blank. You want to enter the subject, and this is just briefly what the Aero is about. So when it's in the list, you can get an idea what it's about. And then here's the sort of quick overview of what it is. This Aero template is active, so I do want to see it on my list. I'm going to leave this billable unchecked because this may vary by client. And again, this is probably not project specific, but if it were, you do have the option to assign that at this point. And then this is where Aero really sings. You can add steps for this template. And these are standardized steps to make sure that your staff member or you doesn't forget to do something when they are performing this task, that they always perform each of these steps, and that they have the resources to perform this step. So you can give them a link where to do this. So for instance, in Bill.com, the link sends them to Bill.com's inbox. So it'll send them right to there when they're doing the work. It also gives them a link to Bill.com's in support articles. So if they have a question, they can go straight there. And then if we had a library procedure for this one, which I'm not sure we do, but we will, I'm sorry, we won't cover the library quite yet, but if we had an internal procedure for doing this, we would be able to link that to this standard operating procedure ID, our internal procedures. And I'm just going to pop over there and duplicate that tab really fast. And let's pop over to managing these procedures and look where I would get this. See here in Bill.com, let's pay bills. That's number 3. So if I go back in here and I can link that now to our internal document for 3. And then in the library, and we're going to cover that at the end, if there was a library procedure I wanted to link it to, I could also link it to that here. We sort of recommend that you order your steps with some room in there. And you can see here we've ordered them 10, 20, 30, 40. That gives you room to add a step if you forget one, but you can also always reorder these. I can change this to 20 if I want to, and change the other one to 10, so that they'll be reordered the next time this is performed. So once I'm done editing that, I can save and close it. And again, these Aero templates, as you can see, are not really assigned to a specific person, and they're not assigned to a specific company. Where that starts to happen is in the master Aeros. And master Aeros are when you start taking those Aero templates and start assigning them to specific team members for specific clients. So let's look now at a master Aero. We've got Robert is assigned to be paying bills. And so what's happened is we've taken that paying bills template and created a master Aero out of it. And this time we've actually assigned it to a specific staff member, because now this master Aero is going to have a lot of separate Aeros connected to it that are going to show up on Robert's to-do list. So we can put in the Aero type, and this will populate from the Aero template since we did that. The estimated duration is going to populate from the Aero template since we used that to create this master Aero. If the day's to-do date had been in there, that would also populate. The fields that wouldn't have populated are the ones for Robert and the ones for company. The subject's going to populate from there, and this description. But then this description now has gotten somewhat client specific. We've added just a little note in there to let them remind them who the final approver is for that specific client. If we've got a specific hourly rate, we can put in an estimate for this. That will help us run some KPIs again later. And then if this is linked to a specific client accounting service project or maybe a consulting project, which would be less likely for a recurring Aero, but still for a master Aero. But for a client accounting services project, we can link that. And then out in the project area later, we'll have all those master Aeros linked. So now that you've sort of filled in the top, you want to specify how often do you want this master Aero to be repeated. And for this particular one, we've specified that we want it to happen weekly. You can see we've got a bunch of different choices here. You can say every weekday. Maybe it's an Aero that you want your staff to perform every day, like answering the voicemail. Or we want to do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Then we can set some different occurrence options like monthly or yearly. And if we want that to repeat every week, then we have a start date. We're going to start it in August. This would be typically when you're bringing on a new client. You're going to start their services next month. And the end date, we recommend that you don't schedule these more than a year or two out. And that's something you kind of want to do in December of every year. Just review what all your master Aeros are, see which ones need to be renewed for the next year, but don't schedule these out until 2200. It's amazing to me how many of our clients have done that, because personally I don't plan to be working still in 2200. And then you can also specify how many dates you want to be in here. That sort of comes in simultaneously with this, but it's a different way to schedule how far out in advance you want that to happen. And then we've said we want this to happen every week, and we want it to happen on Tuesdays. If we didn't have these already inserted here, once we'd specified those occurrences, we'd go ahead and insert the occurrences, and then down here we would actually see all the future times that this work is to be performed. In this particular case, this Aero has mostly completed steps, so you can see that they are completed. If it had been a task that we were newly assigning, the status here would say not started for all of them. And then if you want to go out and then change this and reset the pattern, maybe you want this now to happen on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, what you'd want to do is to delete all the unchanged ones and then insert new ones. You can also add any sort of one-off things. Maybe there's one week you realize, hey, Tuesday is actually on Christmas Day, so I'm going to just have them do it on Monday that week instead, something like that. And then when you're looking at this master arrow, if it's something that's already existed for a while, you'll be able to actually see the time that has been logged doing that task in the past. All right, so that's master arrows. Now let's go back to the Manage tab. We've covered master arrows, Aero templates, email templates, and procedures very quickly. And let's go review the library. I've sort of alluded to that in the past, but the library is one of the most powerful things about Aero. What we've done is actually create a lot of the procedures for you and the templates for you that you can use to get up and running quickly in your firm. We have templates written for specific vendors or specific apps like Bill.com. We have some more generic ones like just 1099s, doing things in QBO. Here's some procedures on QBD conversions. We had a big conversation on QBO chat yesterday about converting from QBO to QBD. Now the beauty of these is that we actually keep these up to date for you. Remember I said that these apps change all the time. And the how-tos change all the time. So we actually keep these up to date for you, and when things change in Bill.com, when things change in Expensify, we update the procedure so that you always have the latest data. The library comes in two flavors. There's the basic library that's included with every Aero subscription, and then we do have premium library, which includes the more app-specific procedures. When you can view these procedures, you can't edit the library procedures. But if you want to, you could always link these to your own company templates. We also have library templates that give you those step-by-step instructions. Here's one on Bill.com for entering bills. And you can either quickly add a master arrow from that, so a repeating one. You can add one arrow, that would be a one-time task, or you can copy these templates and then make changes that are specific to your firm. When you add an arrow for this, a single one-off arrow, you can see we've got the steps, and then we've also got the links all in there for you. And it's all set for you to just go ahead and assign it to a specific person and a specific company, and you're ready to go. This also, if I had gone into the library and the library templates, and I'd cloned it instead, then I could edit it for my own firm and add additional links to my own internal procedures if I wanted to, rather than just the links to the library procedures. All right, so I've left an entire minute here for questions. Sarah, do you have any questions that you want to bring up out loud?
Let's have you talk about, okay, so one of the questions that really could use a demo is, is there a search feature in the library? Let's say you are looking for a template for a recurring sales receipt in QBO or something. How would you search for that?
All right, so like every place else in Aero, you can group these by author, by any of the headers here. So if I wanted to just see, if I wanted it sorted by the apps used, I would get a list of all the apps, right? That would be that way. Or if I want to look for a specific one, then I'd use this filter to go out and look for something that contains the word bank in its description, for instance. And then I get a list of every task that has to do with configuring the bank or making deposits or reconciling bank accounts. I tend to, whenever I use this filter, I try to be as unspecific as possible. The more specific I get, the more likely I am to use exactly the wrong words instead of the right words. But you always, when you're filtering, want to use contains and not necessarily equal to. But maybe I want to see everything that applies to bill.com. So at that point, I would get all the bill.com. And then I like to sometimes go out here and sort this whole thing by last modified so I can go out and see if there's been any new ones in here or if there have been any that have been recently updated in case I have internal ones I've based off of those.
Really quickly.
Okay.
There you go. You're back up.
To the demo. All right. So again, we start with Aero Templates. Those are the basic. And from an Aero template, we can create a master arrow or a one-time occurring arrow. So again, an Aero template is not assigned to a particular person. It's not assigned to a particular client. A master arrow is always assigned to a particular person and it is always referencing, not always, but most of the time will be also referencing a specific company. But a master arrow is never going to show up on anybody's to-do list. It's only the parent for all of those baby arrows that do show up on somebody's to-do list. So it's only the one that controls all of those sub-occurrence options. And then an arrow itself is what has a specific time, a specific date, a specific person, and usually a specific client as well. And that arrow will always show up on someone's to-do list at some point in time. There's specific time related to that specific arrow. So this is a one-time occurrence. You can see it's an arrow occurrence, and it is a one-time occurrence of a master arrow. And that master arrow was created from an Aero template. So I've created an Aero template that's my standardized way of doing work in my firm. And then I've used that master template to add a master arrow, which then is related to a specific person and probably a specific company, and might also be related to a specific project. And then once I've created that master arrow, I can then specify how often I want that to happen. And that will create all the baby arrows. Now this one won't have any baby arrows because I just started it. I just started creating that one. But I'm not actually going to because we have enough bill paying in this demo account. So we understand this hierarchy is a little bit confusing. That's one of the more powerful things about Aero is we do have all these levels of it, and that is also one of the ways that it makes it a little confusing to start up your company. What we kind of recommend sometimes is it seems a little daunting to go out and set up all those Aero templates and then set up all those master arrows and then you've got to figure out this all, and it seems a little overwhelming to get started. So one of the things we often recommend to people as they're starting individual or they're starting to use arrows is just to start to create a task as you're doing it. So just sort of start this add a couple steps. And so you can sort of, as you're doing this task that is something you know you always are doing, and it won't let me because I haven't even done this, because a task, a specific arrow, has to be assigned to a specific person, has to have a specific type, and it also has to have a task. So if I'm going to go out and do payroll, and it's something I got in my head, I don't need to write this down. I know how to do it. But I can't hire a staff person until I write this down so that she can do it herself or he can do it themselves. So as I'm doing it, I will just go out, edit this, and start adding these steps as I do it. And then boom, yeah, okay, this one time this task might be a little bit, take me a little bit longer because I've documented it as I've done it. But now I can go out and I can make this into an Aero template. And then from there on, I can then go out and assign it to somebody else, or I can then create a master arrow, which is a set of recurring arrows for a specific client and assign it to a specific person. So it lets you kind of ease into getting your firm set up. So you don't have to spend a whole week just setting everything up before you can start using it. Just start adding those tasks as you do them, and before long you'll have an entire library of Aero, library is a different word, but you have an entire set of firm-specific tasks of what you do. And again, another quick start link is to start using some of the library procedures and templates for your firm.
There was a question, it's kind of outside of what you covered, but it's a good question that can you assign an employee permission so they only see specific clients?
Absolutely. We have a lot of levels in security levels in Aero of what they can see and what they can't see. And Sarah is actually better at these than I am, but I'm going to go to the help site. And in the help site, we have, help me, where
the search box. Just type security into the search box.
Thank you.
Yeah, that search box is usually the fastest way to find something.
Yeah. So you can set specific security levels for your staff. Now these security levels determine what they can see in a lot of different places. So it will sometimes determine what they can even see on the menus. If they are a lower level employee, they will only see their dashboard and they will only see the work that is assigned to them. And they won't have access to the Manage tab necessarily. They won't be able to just click on the list and see all the companies. I'm trying to find, here we go. So you can see what they can see. Managed companies, they have to be at least a 6 to see your entire client list.
There's a question about what other apps are covered in the library. And the best way to find that instead of just scrolling through the library is just go to our Aero Workflow website. And the library is listed there, and it shows you the apps that are covered there. And we actually have added recently a couple of method templates to our library, so we need to get our little method up there, but there's also method in there as well, and we have plans to add more. If users have ideas for apps they'd like to see in the library, please let us know.
And you can tell in the library whether an app is premium or not by whether it has this little gem icon. And again, the premium ones tend to be the more app-specific ones and not the more general ones that are just, say, for QBO or QBD. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us.